Welcome back to Bangers and Smash. On this episode, I'm talking about one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic camera design ever to grace planet Earth, the Leica M3. The original Leica M3 was released in 1954. This is a time before Elvis Presley was a household name. This is before Concorde had even been conceived, and people hadn't even been into outer space, let alone to the moon. The early versions of these cameras are now pushing on for 70 years old, and it's quite amazing that even though this is a little bit damaged, as you'll see in the B-roll, it still works and it still performs just as good as probably the day it came out of the factory. And I think that's one of the reasons why Leica has such a good reputation amongst camera enthusiasts, is when they made the Leica M3, the quality was just there. You know, these are the days before people had computer-aided design. 1954, this camera was probably designed by a man with a pencil and a ruler. And it's just incredible that they just function so well. The gears keep on going. Yeah, it's a testament for the engineering of the time that these cameras are still going strong even now. If you watch any YouTube videos or you read any articles about the M3, the first thing that always comes up is a viewfinder, and it is big and it's bright and it works very well. It has a slight blue cast to it compared to other Leica cameras that I've owned, and the 50mm frame lines are great if you like 50mm. I personally prefer a 28 or a 35, which is why I don't use my M3 too much anymore. The other thing that comes up a lot is the double stroke versus single stroke. Now, my camera is a double stroke. When you get used to the double stroke method, it's a very short throw, so you end up doing it very quick and you get used to it. And if you go back to a single stroke, it feels a little bit weird. And apparently the reason that the Leica engineers did this in the first place was they were worried with a single stroke that people would tear the film, and they realized later on that that wouldn't be the case, so they switched it to a single stroke. The final thing that people always talk about compared to more modern film Leicas is the way you load the film. And this does have a cassette that you slide the film into. It is a little bit finicky, a little bit clumsy, but after you've done it a few times, it just becomes second nature. So again, it's one of those things you shouldn't really worry about if you're thinking about getting an M3. Things that you should worry about though are deterioration of the finder patch, which can become not as clear as it used to be, so it can be hard to marry up the two images. And I'm not sure if it's because there's condensation or potentially some kind of mold or something inside this, or fungus. I guess we need to send it in to get it repaired. But yeah, that's something to be aware of. The finder patch can be a little bit hard to see if the camera hasn't necessarily been taken care of so well. So the shutter in this is rubberized cloth, and that can deteriorate over time. And I did actually own, it wasn't an M3, it was an M4 that had got a very tiny hole in the shutter curtain. You could barely notice it, and after using it for a year, it actually teared, which resulted in an expensive repair. So there's a couple of things to be wary of if you're thinking about buying one of these. The reason I actually bought this M4P was because at the time it was the cheapest Leica that I could find in the UK, and these brass bodied M3s were much more expensive, but that seems to have equalized somewhat now, so they're about the same price. And I think deciding between them, I mean, really this has got the history, this is made in such an amazing way that it's a little bit hard to compete with. But that being said, the M4P does have the better frame lines if you prefer 35 or 28mm lenses on your camera like me. The other question I get asked a lot is, why don't I get this replaced? And the simple reason is, this camera was made in, I believe, 1957. It's only original once, so unless I try to sell this and somebody wants to buy it and I would need to make it look nice, I just really don't see the benefit of replacing this. This becomes brittle on a lot of these cameras, and when I bought it, it looked fine and it just started flaking off. but it's a Leica M3. I can live with it. I'm sure other people could. The rewind knob is like the MP, so this is something that they changed on later Leicas with the little winder. The little winder on the M4P does have a tendency to feel like it's going to break, so they switched back to this on the Leica MP. So actually, this isn't a bad thing. It can grind your fingers if you're a little bit of a snowflake. Other things it has on it that other Leicas don't is a self timer. So yes, you can take selfies with a Leica M3. For anyone wondering about the continuity errors in this video, it's because of that light diode and I didn't necessarily notice because I was concentrating on looking at the lens of this camera. So the reason I bought the M3 was I moved to Hong Kong for a year back in 2018 and my camera collection was in storage, so I didn't have any cameras to play around with, and I walked into a shop and they had a Canadian made 35mm Summicron that I really wanted. I didn't have a 35mm lens in my collection for the Leica up until then, and it's kind of one of my favorite focal lengths. So I went into the shop and they had it attached to this camera, and the price difference between buying it with or without the M3 was negligible, so this camera didn't actually cost me much. This was before the days of prices going crazy on film cameras, so I got very lucky. I might actually sell this because I've got far too many cameras in my collection, but time will tell. Maybe I'll hold on to it and they'll go up another $1,000 because people have gone crazy for film Leicas. Anyway, thanks for watching my rambly video. I appreciate it. Leave me a comment down below if you have any opinions about the M3, my video, just how this is presented, or whatever. And yeah, thanks for watching. Now, go away. Bye.